President Trump calling out Nancy Pelosi. Enough is enough, Nancy. Trump saying Nancy Pelosi's gotten filthy, stinking rich off trading inside information. That's what he said. We have the clip saying it's time for a real investigation. Also, the Federal Reserve bucking the pressure and refusing to cut the night rate. We'll show you what just happened. Why the Fed says no cuts are coming. They say because the economy is ripping, growing at gangbuster speed, and more stories as well from around the country, including what the next mayor of New York City is now promising to do, saying he will make it his mission to revoke your Second Amendment rights.
Some welcome news for the U.S. economy. New numbers show a sharp turnaround after a worrisome first quarter. CNN senior reporter Matt Egan is joining us here in the Situation Room. How big of an improvement is this new report for the U.S. economy?
Well, Wolf, the headline here is a positive one, right? GDP, the broadest measure of the U.S. economy, it did rebound in the second quarter, 3%. That is a solid number. And it also beat expectations. This marks a major improvement from the first quarter when we saw a rare contraction.
So for the first time in 7 years, for the first time since Trump's first term in office, the U.S. economy is growing at over 3% per annum in just 6 months. With everything this administration has done, all of their policies, unleashing growth in America, that's what they're focused on, appears to be working. Second quarter GDP coming in at a record 3%, well over the estimated 2.3. Trump taking a victory lap this morning, posting on Truth Social, second quarter GDP just out 3%, way better than expected. Too late, must now lower the rate. Talking about Jerome Powell. No inflation, let people buy and refinance their homes. Well, Jerome Powell deciding not to listen to that advice. The Fed wrapping up their FOMC meeting and announcing they've decided to leave the night rate unchanged. No rate cuts in the near future. What this means is, even with the Fed purposely trying to slow the economy, keeping rates elevated at around 4.5%, the economy is still going gangbusters. For comparison, think about this, right? During the last administration, during the Biden administration, for the first 2 years of Biden's term, from 2020 to 2022, the Fed cut rates to 0%. Zero. Imagine what would happen if rates were at 0% right now. We'd probably see, 6, maybe 7, 8% GDP growth. It would also be much cheaper for everything, much cheaper to buy a house, pay off your debts, expand your business. Anything that involves credit would be much cheaper. So why is Powell doing this? Not cutting rates, keeping it unaffordable to live the American dream. Why else? Donald Trump, when in doubt, blame President Trump. The Fed says due to Trump's tariff policy, we can't cut rates.
Total PCE prices rose 2.5% over the 12 months ending in June, and that, excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 2.7%. These readings are little changed from the beginning of the year, although the underlying composition of price changes has shifted. Services inflation has continued to ease, while increased tariffs are pushing up prices in some categories of goods. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have moved up on balance over the course of this year on news about tariffs, as reflected in both market-based and survey-based measures.
The president obviously very unhappy about this. He campaigned on lowering prices, not just getting inflation back to where it was 2%, but making things cheap again. He's done everything in his executive power to do this. The last thing that's missing is lowering interest rates. What we need in reality is no Federal Reserve, not a politicized Federal Reserve. We don't need changing the Fed structure to make it agree with the current administration, whether it's this administration or the next. What we need is no Fed at all. We need to end the Fed. Let the markets decide where interest rates should be. And we know there are members of the Trump administration who feel this way, who share that idea. If there's ever a time to end the Fed, it's now. Will it happen? Unlikely. Meanwhile, one person, one politician who's not suffering at all with these higher rates is one Nancy Pelosi, one of the wealthiest members of Congress with a net worth of over $261 million. How? How in the world does a member of Congress with a $174,000 a year salary turn $174K a year into $250 million? I honestly have no idea. It's speculated that she does this through insider trading, which surprisingly is allowed for members of Congress who can legally trade on the inside information they learn in the course of their daily job. Something that for any of us, for any normal person, besides these 535 elected members of Congress, is flat out illegal. And all of us would be in prison for 20 years if we did this. And we know Nancy is doing this. Her trading history, it's been disclosed publicly. And time and again, she beats not only the S&P, she beats almost every hedge fund in net annual returns. How is that possible? Maybe she's in the wrong business. 2 months ago, for instance, she bought shares and calls of a company called Tempest, this small AI company. 17 days later, the stock skyrocketed and she made 213% on that single trade. How in the world does Nancy Pelosi know enough about the AI industry and this specific small AI company to buy shares and calls 17 days before it just goes gangbusters? And this happens month after month after month. Well, President Trump says enough. Enough is enough. There are victims of Pelosi's gains. Each time she does this, there's a regular retail investor on the other side of that trade who's losing because they don't have the same information that she does. Trump calling for a full investigation into Nancy Pelosi, saying she has gotten rich, filthy rich, off inside information. Watch what he said.
I like it conceptually. And, Nancy Pelosi became rich by having inside information. She made a fortune with her husband, and I think that's disgraceful. So in that sense, I'd like it, but I'd have to really see I study these things very carefully, and this just happened. So I'll take a look at it. But conceptually, I like it. And what I do think is Nancy Pelosi should be investigated because she has the highest return of anybody practically in the history of Wall Street, save a few. How did that happen? It happened by she knows exactly what's going to happen, what's going to be announced. She buys stock, and then the stock goes up after the announcement's made. And she ought to be investigated.
In another story, Zohran Mamdani, the likely next mayor of New York City, the unapologetic Soviet-style socialist, holding a press conference this morning calling for a nationwide ban on assault weapons, promising as mayor that he will lead calls nationwide to ensure we pass this legislation immediately to revoke the right of any American to buy or possess an assault rifle, including the popular AR-15. Watch.
By a senseless act of violence. And as New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and Americans across the country mourn this mass shooting, we are reminded that no matter how strong our gun laws are in this state, we are only as safe as the weakest laws in this nation. And so in this moment, the onus is on all of us to follow the words of Alain's brother and to put forward a vision of stronger gun laws. And I echo the call from Governor Hochul for a nationwide ban on assault rifles, as it is horrifying to each and every one of us in this room and beyond that a man with such documented mental health struggles was able to purchase a weapon, leave alone a weapon of such devastating capability. And we know that the consequences of national inaction, though we feel them this week in Midtown, we know that they join a list of so many other places across this country. Be they Uvalde, be they El Paso, be they Sandy Hook, be they Charleston. As mayor, I will lead calls to ensure that we pass the legislation necessary beyond New York, such that every New Yorker can rest assured that we need not prepare for the next iteration of this horrific mass shooting.
So now we know that this guy, who we thought may be the left's version of Donald Trump, someone who just speaks the truth, just like Trump does, blatantly honest, just says what he believes. It turns out that's not the case at all. He's just another Dem hack. What we just heard him say was a talking point. He's just spilling these talking points. The AR-15 they want to ban, it's not an assault rifle. It's a semi-automatic rifle. It's not a weapon of war. We always hear them say we have to get weapons of war off America's streets. Nobody in a war zone is carrying around a semi-automatic rifle. Real automatic weapons are already extremely difficult to purchase. And let me know what you think about this, about an immigrant who comes to this country and thinks he has the right to revoke our Second Amendment rights. I'll never understand that mindset in general. Someone thinking that they're all powerful and can just take someone else's rights away. It's just a foreign concept to me. How about live and let live? Is that too much to ask for? All right, that wraps up this episode.